It was late afternoon when the fading sun spread gold across the open plains, and silence rolled like a heavy blanket over the horizon. John McAllister, a widowed rancher in his 40s, stood by the corral mending a broken fence post when he first noticed her, a young Comanche girl stumbling across the prairie, barefoot, bloodied, and terrified. Her clothes were torn, her breathing ragged, and her eyes darted around as if she expected danger to leap from the tall grass. At first, John thought it might be a trick, a setup by a raiding party. The Comanche were known for their cunning tactics, and a lone girl appearing so close to his land seemed suspicious. But when she collapsed just a few yards from his barn, instinct overcame caution. He dropped his tools and ran toward her. Her skin was warm with fever. The girl tried to speak but only gasped out a few broken words in her language. John lifted her gently and carried her into his cabin, laying her on the couch near the fire. He could see now that she couldn't have been older than 16. A deep gash cut across her shoulder, and her ankle was swollen, perhaps from days of running. He fetched clean water and his late wife's old linen bandages. "Easy now," he whispered as he cleaned her wound. She winced but didn't resist. The look in her eyes was not of hatred, but of fear and exhaustion. That night, John stayed awake, his rifle resting by his chair. He knew helping a Comanche girl could mean trouble. The tribes were restless, settlers had been pushing into their lands, and retaliations had been growing violent. Still, something in his conscience wouldn't allow him to let her die alone. By dawn, the girl stirred. When she opened her eyes, she looked at him cautiously, unsure of his intentions. He smiled faintly and offered her a tin cup of water. "Drink. You're safe here," he said softly. She hesitated, then took it. Through a mix of gestures and broken English, John learned her name, Taya. She'd been captured by outlaws who intended to sell her or trade her for supplies. She escaped during the night but had been running ever since, surviving on little more than rainwater and roots. When she realized he meant no harm, she began to relax. John made her porridge, and though she didn't say much, she nodded her thanks. For the first time in years, John felt a kind of quiet purpose. His home, long empty since his wife's passing, now had life again, even if only for a short time. By afternoon, she was strong enough to walk around the yard. He showed her the horses, the barn, and how to pour feed for the chickens. She smiled once, a small, shy thing, and he found himself smiling back. But deep down, he knew this peace wouldn't last. That night, John's dog began barking wildly. The ground trembled faintly, a sign he recognized all too well. He stepped outside with his lantern and froze. Across the open prairie, in the dim glow of the moon, dozens of silhouettes were approaching on horseback. 70 Comanche warriors surrounded his ranch within minutes. Their faces were painted, their lances and rifles gleamed in the moonlight. The leader rode forward, tall, broad-shouldered, with eagle feathers braided in his hair and a grim expression carved into his features. Taya ran out of the cabin, her eyes widening in recognition. "Father," she whispered. John's stomach tightened. The man at the front, the one glaring down at him from his horse, was her father. Chief Watika, known among settlers as the Storm of the Plains, a man whose name alone could send entire wagon trains retreating. The warriors fanned out, their horses snorting and stamping the dirt. Arrows were notched, rifles cocked. John stood still, hands raised slightly, his heart pounding like thunder. The chief's voice cut through the silence. "White man, you took my daughter." John swallowed hard. "I found her near death. I gave her food, shelter, nothing more." The chief dismounted slowly, eyes never leaving John. Taya stepped between them, shouting in her language. Her voice was pleading, desperate. She pointed to her shoulder, showing the bandaged wound. Then she gestured toward John's cabin, then at her father, her words rapid and emotional. The chief listened, his face stern but softening. The warriors shifted uneasily, waiting for his signal. After a long silence, Chief Watika approached John. His dark eyes searched the rancher's face. Finally, he said in broken English, "You helped my daughter. You could kill. You did not." John nodded. "She's safe now. I mean no harm." The chief's gaze lowered briefly, then he raised his hand. The warriors relaxed their weapons, though tension still hung in the air like smoke. Taya's father spoke again. "If not for her words, you die tonight." John exhaled, his palms sweating. "I figured as much," he replied quietly. The chief motioned for his daughter to come forward. "She come home now." But Taya hesitated. Her eyes flickered between her father and John. He good man, she said softly. Saved me. The chief nodded solemnly. Then we owe debt. Before leaving, the chief gestured toward one of his men. The warrior rode forward carrying a bundle of pelts and silver trinkets, gifts. He placed them at John's feet. For kindness, said the chief. For life of my blood. John didn't know what to say. You don't owe me, he muttered, but the chief raised a hand. Among Comanche, we repay. Always. Taya turned once more before leaving, giving John a faint smile. Thank you, she whispered. Then she was gone, riding into the darkness with her people. The night returned to silence. The flicker of the fire inside the cabin felt strangely hollow now. The house that had briefly been full of life was empty again. Over the next few days, John went back to his routine, though his thoughts often wandered. He couldn't shake the memory of the girl's soft voice or the way her father's eyes had burned with both fury and respect. Weeks passed. Then one evening, as John was chopping wood, he heard distant hoofbeats. His first thought was trouble again, but when he turned, he saw only two riders approaching, Taya and another warrior, much younger. When they reached him, Taya dismounted, smiling. She carried a small woven pouch. Inside it were beads, a carved bone pendant, and a piece of buffalo hide with symbols painted on it. My father say peace, she said. Your land safe. No Comanche touch. John blinked in surprise. The meaning was clear. She had come to mark his ranch as a place protected by her tribe, an honor rarely given to any white settler. He felt a lump rise in his throat. Tell your father I'm grateful, he said softly. She nodded. He know. And I know. Before leaving, she pressed the pendant into his hand. You friend of Taya, she said. Always. After that day, the ranch was never disturbed again. Travelers would often tell stories of a lone rancher whose home was mysteriously spared from raids, even when nearby farms were burned to ashes. Some said he had struck a deal with the Comanche, others whispered that he'd once saved one of their own and was protected by their spirits. Years went by, and John grew older. Every so often, he'd find a new bundle of pelts or beads left quietly by his gate, silent reminders that he had not been forgotten. On summer evenings, he'd sit on his porch, staring out at the horizon, where the wind carried the echoes of distant drums. And sometimes, when the sky turned red with the setting sun, he thought he could almost see a young woman on horseback, riding the prairie free and proud, turning her head once to smile before vanishing into the wild. In the end, John realized something profound: compassion could bridge even the widest divides. Where once there was fear and bloodshed, there now existed mutual respect, born not of treaties or power, but of simple humanity. That one act, offering shelter to a frightened girl, had changed the course of his life and touched the heart of a people long considered his enemies. Though their worlds were different, and their paths destined to part, both he and Taya carried the memory of that kindness, proof that even in a land ruled by conflict, mercy still had a place. And so, the legend of the rancher who sheltered a Comanche girl lived on, not written in books or newspapers, but in the whispers of the plains, where wind and memory danced together under endless skies.